Here's my highly requested video. I'm putting together 7 of my family's favorite dinners. These are low carb, easy to make, and have minimal dishes. All of the recipes will be in the description, but throughout this video, I will be sharing tips and tricks to make it easier and more delicious. First up, we have Alice chicken. It's marinated chicken topped with bacon, provolone cheese, and then honey mustard. This is one of my family's all-time favorites. It's also so easy to make. It does require just a small amount of prep work, so I'm just tenderizing the chicken with a fork, just poking a whole bunch of holes so that when I marinate it, it's going to saturate the chicken and it's going to be super yummy. So we have Worcestershire sauce. I'm just covering the chicken with enough of it to really saturate it and let it marinate in the fridge. You can do this in the morning and cook it at night. In my case, I was doing it in the afternoon, so about 12 o'clock when my kids went down for a nap, and then I will be cooking it around 5 o'clock. There are a lot of ways to cook bacon, but my favorite way is just to stick it into the oven. I like to cover the baking sheet with tin foil just because that bacon grease can be very tedious to clean up. We also have a septic system and we need to keep that grease out of there. So I have our oven preheated at 375 for our chicken. So that's going to be the temp I cook the bacon at. I'm going to put that in first, because it is okay if the bacon is done before the chicken because it's just a topping. So I put it in, and then in 10 minutes I flip it over and cook it for about another 10 minutes until it's nice and crispy. So while it's cooking, I am going to lay out all of the chicken. This is that marinated chicken in the Worcestershire sauce, and I'm just going to lay it on the pan. I like to make sure they're not really touching because when I put the toppings on later, it makes it a lot easier. I like cooking my chicken with a meat thermometer that goes into the oven. You get perfectly cooked chicken every single time with this, so I cannot recommend it enough. You'll see me use it a lot throughout this video. So the bacon's been cooking in the oven for about 10 minutes. I'm just flipping it over so it gets a nice even crisp. I'm also going to take a paper towel to it just to soak up as much bacon grease as I can. This helps the bacon get so much crispier. You cook your chicken until it reaches 165, but game changer, if you bring it out at 155 degrees and let it rest on the pan for 5 minutes, it'll bring the temp up to 165, which is where it needs to be, but it doesn't get all dried out and overcooked. It's so much better this way. I use 1 piece of bacon for each piece of chicken that I have here, and then I'm going to take the provolone cheese and put it on top. This is a thin slice, but I'm doubling it to make it more of a regular size. I did not mean to grab the thin sliced provolone, but here we are. So after topping it with the bacon and then the provolone, you just put it in the oven until the cheese melts on top. So I always plate it and then I'll top it with some honey mustard in a little bit. I am serving it with a side of green beans. Love the frozen bag of vegetables that are like steam in. You just put them in the microwave and they come out perfect every time. So use your favorite honey mustard and top it on the chicken and enjoy. Next up, I'm going to share how I like to cook up some yummy salmon for dinner. I'm also going to be sharing a delicious garlic, Parmesan zucchini squash side for this. It's so good. I love picking up some fresh salmon from the counter at our grocery store, but I don't always have the time for that, and salmon is only good in the fridge for I don't know, what is it, a day or two, and then it goes bad. So I buy it frozen so that I can make it more often because it is just so good for you to eat. I'm going to marinate my salmon in some soy sauce. I'm just covering it enough so that it can soak and stay in the fridge for about an hour. It needs to be at least 30 minutes, but I definitely would not go over like 3 or 4 hours marinating. There are so many different ways you can marinate salmon or top it with something, but the best way, or like the easiest way, I think, in my opinion, to cook salmon is just in a pan and put it into the oven. So you can top it with whatever you like. I recommend just squeezing a lemon on top. Then if you're like me and craving it to be just a little bit more sweet, I'm gonna top it with some brown sugar and rub it in a little bit. After the brown sugar is rubbed in, I'm going to use some dill and just sprinkle it on top of the salmon. And to make it even more delicious, I'm using some honey and I just drizzle that on top. You can serve any side you like with your salmon, but I recommend a roasted garlic parmesan zucchini squash. It's so good. So I'm gonna lay a piece of parchment paper on my pan just for an easier cleanup. And then I have a yellow squash and a green zucchini. So I'm starting by just chopping it all up into bite-sized pieces, and then I put it all on the pan. And if you're like me, I don't like that huge pile of dishes at the end of a meal. So to keep that down, I'm going to be mixing it all right here on the pan. So literally just topping it with some olive oil, salt, freshly cracked pepper, Italian seasoning, Parmesan, and then garlic. And the recipe has all the measurements if you want them, but I just eyeball it and that's so much easier. Plus you don't have to wash all those measuring cups. So if you're a measuring person, the recipe is in the description. Or if you're like me and like to use as few dishes as possible, the more often you do it too, the better of a feel you get for like how much seasoning and spices to use. So just practice, keep making dinners for your family and you'll get better every single time. So once I have everything nicely coated, I'm going to lay it in a single layer on my pan. And then you cook it at 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes, depending on how thick or how well done you want your zucchini to be. I do it for about 25 minutes. Salmon only takes about roughly like 15 minutes to cook, but I also use my meat thermometer and this cooks it perfectly every single time. So it goes in the oven with the salmon and then it tells me exactly what temperature it is. I always stick it in the thickest slice and I'm going to set it for 135, but it's going to rest on the counter until it reaches 145. And this is going to help keep it from overcooking and getting super dry. This zucchini with the roasted garlic on it smells so good. I'm just going to toss it on the pan a little bit before serving it on the plate. I brought the salmon out at 135 degrees and then let it rest on the pan until it reaches 145. And then at that point it is ready to be served, and it's such an easy way to cook up some salmon. We've only recently started making salmon more often, so my kids are having fish sticks just to help kind of get used to the flavor of fish. And then usually when we've had something a lot more often, they are way more willing to try it. Next up, we have a Parmesan chicken, and this one is seriously so easy. Anybody can make it. It's also a huge crowd pleaser. Like, I would make this for family dinners, like with our extended family and everything, just because everybody loves it so much. Literally, all you do is take the chicken, put it in the pan, and then half mayonnaise, half grated Parmesan cheese, stir it, mix it together, and then put it on top of your chicken. You can measure it out. It would probably be about like 3/4 cups of mayonnaise and 3/4 cups of Parmesan, but I just eyeball it and mix it together and then put it on top of our chicken. We like to have a lot on top, and then it gets nice and crispy in the oven, and it's just packed full of flavor. It's so good. I'm taking out my oven meat thermometer again. This just cooks everything to perfection. I use it with any of our raw meats that I'm cooking. I don't do a time, I just do it by temperature. So if you missed it earlier, for chicken, I like cooking it to 155. I'll pull it out and then I'll let it rest on the counter until it reaches 165. So here you can see I had my alarm set off for 155. It's at 160 and it takes roughly like 5 minutes for it to get up to temp. You can serve this with whatever side you like, but typically we will just steam up some like green beans. I love the frozen packs that you just put in the microwave. It steams them in the bag and then they're ready to be served. This also pairs great with mashed potatoes. Out of all the recipes I'm sharing today, this is probably the one I make the most. Next up, we have a sausage sheet pan. If you are not familiar with sheet pan meals, you need to look them up. They're so easy. While I'm prepping all the sausage and vegetables, I'm preheating the oven at 425, and basically you just chop everything up, throw it on a sheet pan, season it, and put it in the oven. You can use whatever vegetables you have in your refrigerator, like anything that's extra or going bad soon. Just cut it up, throw it on the sheet pan with your sausage. Today I'm just using some frozen vegetable packs that I had in our freezer, and then I'm just drizzling about a tablespoon of olive oil on top, and then I do salt, cracked black pepper, and that's it. I toss it all together and it's that easy. You can also use whatever seasonings you like, but I'm just keeping it simple with salt and pepper. Put it in the oven for about 40 minutes or until it gets nice and browned. Sometimes we'll eat it as is, and then other times I just love a brown sugar balsamic glaze, and it's really easy to make. I'll make sure the recipe is in the description, but basically it's just brown sugar, balsamic vinegar, Dijon mustard, and honey, and it's kind of sweet and you can definitely taste the vinegar to it. I like dipping my like sausage sheet pan into it. My husband likes drizzling the whole thing on top, so I recommend trying to dip your sausage and your vegetables in this. It's so good, but it definitely does not need it. Like, the sheet pan is delicious as is. So I usually serve it like this, and then in the little ramekins I'll put the sauce in there, and I usually dip mine in here, and then my husband, he'll just pour the whole thing over his. But again, it's not needed. The sheet pan is delicious as is, and if you just wanted to switch things up a little bit, try something new, I would recommend that honey balsamic. Next up, we have a chicken Caesar salad. I always save this for my super busy days, like the ones I've been at work and then I have to come home with the kids and make dinner right away, or whenever we've just been busy. It's always my go-to. So we just have our raw chicken breast, and I'm seasoning it with just salt and pepper on both sides, rubbing it in a little bit. I have a pan on the stove that I just put a little bit of olive oil on, and I'm heating it up on a medium high temperature, and then I'll just get a nice sear on both sides of this chicken. Usually takes about 5 minutes on each side to get a nice sear, and then because they are so thick, I usually just pop them in the oven to finish. So I'm going to use my meat thermometer again just to get it perfectly cooked. So I like to have it let me know when it reaches 155, and then I'll pull it out of the oven and it'll sit and rest until it reaches 165. I have perfectly cooked chicken every single time I cook it this way. And next up, this is just a Caesar salad kit. You can get these at your grocery store and they are so convenient. Yes, you can make it all with separate ingredients and cut it all up and wash it all yourself, but these kits are just incredibly convenient. I just take everything and mix it in the bag. Like, I don't even toss it in a bowl. I'm trying to use as like minimal dishes as possible, and that makes it one less thing I have to wash. After the chicken has rested and got to a good temperature, I'm going to slice it and put it on top of our salad. So if you actually slice it the opposite direction than what I'm slicing it right now, you'll have an easier time cutting it on your plate. I just learned that. I also like to include dried cranberries on my Caesar salad. My husband doesn't care for them, but I think it gives a great flavor. And then we usually top the chicken with some Caesar dressing. That wasn't very pretty because it was the end of the bottle, but you get the picture, and it was delicious. Next up, it has a lengthy name, but it's chicken cutlets with creamy spinach and roasted red pepper sauce. It's so good, I had to share this. It does require a little bit of prep work, so I usually save this for weekends. After making it a few times now, it only takes me about 30 minutes to make, but the first time I made it, I think it was closer to an hour, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to make this anymore, but it's so delicious. Like, I had to make it again and again because I just crave it. It's so good. So I'm just going to share all the tips I can to make this as easy as possible to make. But the original recipe is in the description. So I don't know about you, but when I am making something, usually I'll just measure it and add it as I go. This is a recipe you're going to want to measure and chop everything first. So I have all my measuring cups right here in front of me, and I'm filling them with each of the ingredients that are on the recipe card. So there's spinach, there's red onion, there's like sun-dried tomatoes, and then there's a red roasted pepper. So you can buy the roasted red pepper in a jar for like $4, or you can roast one. Literally all you have to do is broil a red pepper until it's brown on all sides. I usually have it cooking like this, and I'll turn it every once in a while, and then by the time I need to add it to the recipe, it's ready to go. But if you didn't want to do that extra step, you can literally just buy it in a jar. It's just a little bit more expensive. The last ingredients I needed to measure and prep were sour cream and white wine, and now I can get the chicken ready. So it's just raw chicken breast, and then you cut it in half, and that is what's going to make it into a chicken cutlet. That way it's easier and it cooks so much faster on the pan. I'm just seasoning it with a little bit of salt and pepper on both sides before I sear it on my pan. But our pan has olive oil on it, and I have it on a like medium-high heat. It usually takes about 6 minutes on both sides. I flip it whenever it's gotten a golden brown on one side, and then I'll just cook it until the internal temperature reaches 165. Some pieces are smaller than others, so they're going to cook faster. So I take those off the pan as soon as I can. The next step is why I love having everything just prepped and ready. So we have our spinach, our onions, we have our sun-dried tomatoes, and our red bell peppers. You just throw them in the pan and cook them for about a minute. It's still the same pan we cooked our chicken on, so we're not making any new dishes here. So after the minute of searing, you just put in the white wine. I'm just using like white cooking wine, and then it gets simmered for about 2 minutes or until the liquid is almost evaporated. Next up, I am adding the sour cream, and don't forget the chicken juices. Like the chicken that we took off of the pan is going to accumulate a little bit of juice. Sometimes I have more than other times, but you just add that to your pan and it's going to add even more flavor. You'll stir in some more salt and pepper, and then it simmers for about 2 minutes before taking the chicken and placing it back on the pan. So you'll turn it, you'll coat it. I like grabbing as much of that topping as possible and putting it on top. It's so full of flavor. It's delicious. I know a lot of like low carb meals, they're just not satisfying. This is so satisfying. Low carb meals usually feel like they're missing something. This does not give you that feeling at all. It's perfect as is. You can serve this with your favorite side. This time around, I'm using the same old steam-in bag that I like in the microwave. This time it's gonna be broccoli. Most of the time we just eat our vegetables plain. Other times I'll add a little bit of salt and pepper, but I like to keep it simple. Next up is pulled pork. I had to share this one because I'm able to make 5 different meals for our family with just like $14 worth of a pork shoulder. I make this exactly as the recipe explains it, and it comes out perfectly every single time. And then I will put it in vacuum seal bags and put it in our freezer. And whenever I need a quick and easy meal, I will just pull it out, and it's literally like a 5-minute dinner sometimes. Usually I'll just defrost it in some warm water just to get it like loose in the pack, and then I'll remove it and put it in the microwave to warm it the rest of the way up, and then you can serve it on a bun or just as is. I really hope I was able to share some ideas for you that you'll be able to try. You'll have to let me know if you make any of these. And without further ado, I'll see you all next Sunday in a brand new video. Bye!